The locked room inside you isn't filled with crimes. It's filled with doubt, with the fear of not being enough, with the belief that love is conditional on performance, that if you relax, if you stop curating, everything might collapse. That fear is older than this relationship. You learned somewhere that love had to be earned, that being chosen required being impressive, stable, certain. So you built competence, you built independence, you built strength, and then you brought that strength into intimacy only to realize strength without softness becomes distance. Here's the paradox. The thing you're most afraid to show is often the very thing that creates depth. You're not hiding betrayal, you're hiding fragility, and fragility feels dangerous because it removes leverage. When you say, "I'm afraid I'm not enough," you surrender control. You can't manage their perception anymore. You can't negotiate from perfection. You're just there, unaided. But this is what most people never realize. Intimacy is not built when you are impressive. It is built when you are transparent. You said something profound in your reflection. Protection can become isolation dressed as safety. That's psychologically accurate. Emotional avoidance reduces short-term anxiety, but it increases long-term disconnection. The nervous system relaxes in the moment you withhold, and slowly starves in the relationship you're trying to preserve. When you pull back during deep conversations, it's not because you don't care. It's because closeness activates risk, and risk activates old defenses. Humor, silence, deflection, self-editing. Those strategies once kept you safe, but they won't build the kind of love you say you want. There's also something important here. Your confession isn't about reassurance. It's about congruence. You don't want to be loved for the polished version. You want to be loved as a whole person, uncertain, healing, evolving. That's maturity. Real relational strength isn't, "I don't need you." It's, "I could survive without you, but I'm choosing to risk needing you." And yes, after you speak your truth, exposure often feels worse before it feels freeing. Vulnerability activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The waiting, the wondering, the scanning their face for signs of rejection. That's your nervous system on high alert. But here's the deeper shift. Growth doesn't happen when they respond well. It happens when you realize you survived being seen. Whether they stay or not, you stop performing. You stop negotiating love through image management. You start living in alignment. And alignment is peace. You also touched on something powerful, how we test people in layers. That's normal. Attachment theory shows we reveal in increments to assess safety. But eventually, incremental honesty becomes strategic distance if we never take the leap. At some point, intimacy requires discontinuity, a jump, a door opening fully instead of inch by inch. What you're describing at the end, the moment after confession, isn't weakness. It's transformation. You are shifting from controlled connection to authentic presence. And that shift changes you permanently. Because once you experience being fully honest, you can't go back to curated love without feeling the cost. Here's what I want you to hold on to. You are not asking to be fixed. You are asking to be known. That is not a burden. That is an invitation. And the right kind of relationship does not collapse under truth. It either deepens or reveals that it was built on something fragile to begin with. Both outcomes are clarity. The real victory here isn't whether they stay. It's that you stopped hiding. That you chose courage over control. Presence over performance. Truth over strategy. That's not falling apart. That's becoming real. There's a version of me you've known. The steady one. The thoughtful one. The one who listens carefully, chooses words slowly, keeps emotions measured, the one who seems grounded, even when things feel uncertain. I let you fall in love with that version. I let myself believe that version was the safest one to offer. But there's another version, quieter, less composed, the one who overthinks after conversations end, the one who replays tone and timing and pauses, wondering if I said too much or not enough, the one who sometimes feels like an imposter in their own happiness. That's the room I've kept locked. I didn't lock it because it's ugly. I locked it because it's tender. You know that feeling when your chest tightens and you can't tell if it's fear or anticipation. When someone gets close enough to see you clearly and something inside you whispers, "Careful. Don't let them see everything." That whisper has guided me for years. It has protected me from embarrassment, from rejection, from being misunderstood. It has also kept me from being fully known. There's a cost to being almost known. It looks like connection from the outside. Shared jokes, shared plans, shared mornings. But inside, there's a quiet loneliness that doesn't make sense. You're next to someone who loves you, and still, part of you feels unseen. Not because they failed to look, but because you never let the lights fully turn on. I've become skilled at selective honesty. I'll tell you I'm stressed, but not that I'm afraid I'm failing. I'll admit I'm tired, but not that I'm scared I won't measure up. I'll say I need space, but not that I'm terrified you'll discover I'm not as strong as I seem. It's not lying. It's editing. And editing feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels like protecting the relationship from unnecessary weight. But what if the weight is what makes it real? I used to think love required optimization. Be the best version of yourself. Heal your wounds. Fix your flaws. Arrive complete. Then you can be chosen without question. So I worked on myself endlessly. Read the books. Reflected deeply. Learned how to communicate. Learned how to regulate. Learned how to apologize properly. I turned growth into armor. But armor, no matter how polished, still creates distance. When we talk about vulnerability, people imagine dramatic revelations, confessions of betrayal, secrets that shatter the ground beneath you. But the most transformative confessions are often quiet. They sound like this: "I'm afraid you'll leave if you see how unsure I really am. I'm afraid I won't be enough long term. I'm afraid you'll wake up one day and realize you could do better." Those fears don't make headlines. They just sit in your rib cage and make breathing heavier than it should be. There's something about being loved that exposes you. When someone chooses you consistently, you run out of excuses. You can't blame distance on incompatibility. You can't blame uncertainty on ambiguity. The spotlight turns inward. If they are staying, then the only thing left to question is yourself. And self-questioning can spiral quickly. I've caught myself pulling back when things feel especially good. When you look at me with certainty. When you talk about the future as if I'm obviously in it, something in me tightens. Not because I don't want it, because I do. Because wanting it makes the potential loss more devastating. So I moderate my joy. I downplay my dependence. I keep a small emotional exit plan tucked somewhere in my mind. Not because I plan to use it, but because having it makes me feel less exposed. That's the irony. The backup plan meant to protect me also keeps me half committed. Intimacy has layers. First comes attraction, then familiarity, then comfort, then shared vulnerability. But beyond vulnerability, there's surrender. And surrender isn't about giving up power. It's about releasing control over how you are perceived. That's where I've been stuck. You've asked before why I sometimes deflect serious conversations with humor. Why I suddenly become analytical when emotions rise. Why I say, I'm fine, when I'm clearly somewhere else. I didn't know how to explain it then. Now I do. When emotions deepen, my nervous system hears danger, not because of you, because of history, because somewhere along the way, I learned that being too open meant being too exposed, and being too exposed meant being too vulnerable to loss. So I mastered composure. But composure is not the same as connection. Connection requires being witnessed in your imperfection, not fixed, not reassured into silence, witnessed. There's a difference between someone loving you and someone knowing you. Many relationships survive on love alone. But knowing, truly knowing, requires transparency that feels almost reckless. It means letting someone see the contradictions, the insecurity alongside the confidence, the fear alongside the commitment. I have been afraid that if you saw the full picture, your image of me would crack, that the steady person you rely on would suddenly look unstable, that the thoughtful partner would seem uncertain, that admiration would turn into doubt. But admiration built on illusion is fragile, and I'm tired of fragility. I don't want to be loved for being impressive. I want to be loved for being real. That includes the nights when I question myself, the mornings when I wake up feeling inadequate, the quiet comparisons I make that I never admit out loud, the way I sometimes wonder if I am giving you what you deserve. That wondering doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I care deeply enough to fear failing you. There's something humbling about admitting you're still healing while building something meaningful. We're told we must be whole before we can join with another person. But wholeness is not the absence of wounds. It's the willingness to let someone see them without flinching. For a long time, I believed independence was strength. I prided myself on needing little, on being self-sufficient, on being emotionally regulated enough to never burden someone else. I thought asking for reassurance was weakness, that expressing doubt was instability, that showing fear would make me less desirable. But desire built on invulnerability fades quickly. What lasts is trust. And trust is built when someone says, "This is where I'm unsure," and the other person responds with curiosity instead of judgment. I want that kind of space with you. Not a space where we pretend we're unshakable. A space where shaking is allowed. There's a moment after you speak your truth when silence stretches longer than usual. That silence can feel unbearable. Your mind races. You analyze their breathing, their posture, their facial expression. You search for micro signs of rejection. In that silence, you confront your deepest fear. What if I just ruined everything? But what if honesty isn't destructive? What if it's clarifying? If the relationship can hold your truth, it deepens. If it cannot, it reveals its limits. Either way, you stop living in speculation. Speculation is exhausting. Wondering whether someone would still choose you if they knew everything drains more energy than actual rejection ever could. At least rejection is definitive. Uncertainty lingers like fog. I have lived in that fog too long. You deserve clarity. And so do I. The secret I've been keeping isn't dramatic. It's subtle. It's the ongoing doubt about my adequacy. The fear that I am still learning how to show up fully. The worry that parts of my past have shaped me in ways I don't entirely understand yet. I am not finished becoming who I want to be, and maybe that's what scared me most. I thought love required completion, but maybe love is the space where completion unfolds. When one person opens up authentically, it shifts the dynamic. It gives permission. It lowers defenses. Emotional honesty is contagious, but it has to start somewhere. I am choosing to start. Not because I am fearless, because I am tired of being guarded. There's a loneliness that comes from being admired but not known, complimented but not understood, desired but not fully seen. That loneliness is subtle. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers, if they saw the whole you, would they still stay? I want to stop asking that question in my head and start answering it in real time. Because the only way to know is to open the door. Opening the door means letting you see my uncertainty about the future. Letting you know that sometimes I worry I'll disappoint you. Letting you hear the vulnerability in my voice instead of smoothing it over. Letting you see the cracks in my composure. Cracks are not flaws. They are evidence of depth. I don't want to love you from behind polished glass anymore. I want to love you face to face, without rehearsed lines, without strategic restraint, without pretending I am always stable. Stability is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to face fear together. There will still be moments I pull back. Growth isn't linear. Patterns don't disappear overnight. But now, when I pull back, I want to name it. I want to say, I'm scared right now. Not, I'm fine. That small shift changes everything. Because it turns distance into dialogue. And dialogue is the lifeblood of intimacy. I am realizing that vulnerability is not about dumping every thought without filter. It's about sharing the ones that shape your internal world. The ones that influence how you show up. The ones that quietly guide your reactions. If I hide those, you are loving a curated experience. If I share them, you are loving me. There's freedom in that distinction. Freedom in no longer calculating how much to reveal. Freedom in not measuring whether a truth is too heavy. Freedom in allowing the relationship to stretch and see what it can hold. I don't know exactly how this will change us. Maybe it will bring us closer. Maybe it will create conversations we've been postponing. Maybe it will challenge both of us to grow in ways that feel uncomfortable. But I know this. I would rather build something real than maintain something polished. Because polished love looks good in photographs. Real love survives storms. I am not asking you to fix my doubts. I am not asking you to erase my fears. I am asking you to sit beside them with me. To understand that they exist not because I don't value us, but because I value us enough to fear losing it. Fear is not the opposite of love. Indifference is. And I am far from indifferent. So here I am, not perfectly confident, not completely certain, not finished healing, but honest, fully here. If you step into this room with me, you will see parts of me that tremble. But you will also see commitment that is chosen daily, not assumed. You will see someone who is learning that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to speak anyway. I am speaking, because love that cannot withstand truth is not love I want to keep, and love that can hold truth becomes unshakable. I don't know what happens next. I can't predict your response. I can't control the outcome. But I can control whether I continue hiding. I choose not to. I choose to be known. Not almost known. Not selectively known. Known. And whatever grows from that will be real. There's a version of love that feels safe because it never asks too much of you. It stays on the surface. It celebrates the good days. It smooths over the hard conversations. It avoids the sharp edges. I've lived in that version before. It looks stable. It feels calm. But underneath, something is always missing. Because calm isn't the same as closeness. Closeness asks for something most of us were never taught how to give. It asks for exposure. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind. The kind where you let someone see the thoughts you usually silence before they reach your mouth. There's a sentence that has lived inside me for years. If they really knew me, they would leave. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up when things are going well, when laughter lingers, when plans for the future start sounding real. That's when it gets loudest. Because the more I care, the more there is to lose. So I've learned to manage perception. I show you the thoughtful parts, the steady parts, the capable parts. I let you see my ambition, my humor, my resilience. I let you see strength. What I don't always let you see is doubt. I don't let you see the nights I lie awake wondering if I'm too complicated, if my past shaped me in ways that make long-term love harder, if my fear of abandonment sometimes creates the very distance I'm trying to avoid. You see confidence. You don't always see the questions underneath it. And that's not fair to either of us. Because love built on partial truth becomes fragile. It can survive for years, but it never feels grounded. There's always a subtle anxiety humming beneath it, a quiet awareness that if certain doors opened, everything might shift. I've kept certain doors closed because I thought that was maturity. I thought protecting you from my insecurity was kindness. I thought managing my emotions privately was strength. But there's a difference between emotional responsibility and emotional isolation. Responsibility says, I will own my feelings. Isolation says, I will hide them so you don't see me struggle. I've been choosing isolation and calling it independence. You once asked me why I sometimes seem distant when conversations get deep. Why I suddenly become analytical when emotions rise. Why I change the subject just as we're about to touch something real. It's not because I don't trust you. It's because I'm afraid that if you see the full weight of what I carry, you'll realize loving me is heavier than you expected. There are moments when I look at you and feel overwhelmed by how much you care. And instead of relaxing into it, something in me braces. Because being loved means being seen. And being seen means there's nowhere to hide. We talk about vulnerability as if it's a personality trait, as if some people are just better at it. But vulnerability is not natural for most of us. It feels like stepping into open space without knowing if the ground is solid. And I have always preferred solid ground. Control. Composure. Preparedness. If I anticipate every possible rejection, I won't be surprised by it. If I keep a part of myself reserved, I'll never be completely devastated. That logic has protected me before. But protection has a shadow. It keeps love at arm's length. There's a kind of loneliness that happens when you are loved but not fully known. It's confusing. You sit next to someone who chooses you, who shows up, who invests, and still there's a gap, a small, invisible gap between who you are and who they see. That gap exists because of you, because of me, because I'm the one deciding what's safe to reveal. I've convinced myself that once I'm fully healed, fully confident, fully secure, then I'll let you see everything. But healing doesn't work that way. It doesn't finish neatly. It unfolds in layers. And often, it unfolds inside relationship, not before it. I am still learning how to trust consistency. Still learning how not to interpret silence as withdrawal. Still learning that someone can be frustrated and still committed. Still learning that closeness doesn't automatically lead to loss. Those lessons don't disappear just because I want them to. And pretending they have doesn't make me stronger. It makes me less honest. The truth is, I have been afraid of being too much, too emotional, too reflective, too intense, too aware, too wounded, too sensitive. So I streamlined myself, edited reactions, softened confessions, filtered doubts. I became easier to love. But I don't want to be easy. I want to be real. Real means sometimes I will need reassurance. Real means sometimes I will question whether I'm doing enough. Real means sometimes my past will echo in moments that have nothing to do with you. Real means I'm still human. There's something terrifying about saying, I'm afraid you'll leave if you see all of me. Because once you say it, you can't pretend you're invulnerable anymore. You can't hide behind composure. But there's something freeing about it too. Because once it's spoken, it's shared. And shared fear loses some of its power. I don't expect you to fix my insecurity. I don't expect you to carry my healing. That's mine. But I do want you to understand it. To know that when I pull back, it's not a lack of love. It's fear disguised as self-protection. I want to stop disguising it. There's a threshold in every relationship. A point where you can either stay in comfortable connection or risk deeper intimacy. Comfortable connection is predictable. It's stable. It avoids disruption. Deeper intimacy disrupts everything. It exposes patterns. It forces reflection. It reveals wounds. It demands growth. I've been hovering at that threshold. Close enough to feel connected. Far enough to feel safe. But safety without depth becomes stagnant. I don't want stagnant. I want the kind of love where silence doesn't hide things. Where tension is named instead of swallowed. Where fear is spoken instead of suppressed. I want the kind of love where we can say, this scares me, and neither of us runs. There's a moment after you confess something vulnerable when you feel raw, like skin without armor. Every reaction feels amplified. A pause feels like rejection. A neutral expression feels like doubt. But surviving that moment changes you. It teaches you that being seen doesn't automatically equal abandonment. It teaches you that exposure isn't always followed by loss. It teaches you that intimacy is built in the aftermath of honesty. I am tired of managing love like it's fragile glass, holding it carefully, moving slowly, avoiding impact. Maybe love is stronger than I've allowed it to be. Maybe it can handle the parts of me that are still uncertain. I don't wake up every day fearless. Some mornings, I wonder if I'm equipped for long-term commitment. Not because I don't want it. Because I want it so much it intimidates me. Building a future means believing you are capable of sustaining it. And sometimes I doubt my own capacity. I doubt whether I'm healed enough, stable enough, secure enough. Those doubts don't mean I'm not committed. They mean I care deeply about doing this well, and caring deeply makes you vulnerable to failure. I have been afraid of failing you, afraid that one day you'll look at me differently, afraid that you'll realize I'm more layered than you expected, afraid that the complexity I carry will feel exhausting instead of endearing. So I simplified myself. But simplification shrinks connection. I don't want to shrink anymore. I want to expand into honesty. That means telling you when I feel insecure instead of pretending I'm unaffected. It means admitting when I need reassurance instead of waiting for you to guess. It means saying, I'm scared right now, instead of withdrawing and calling it space. It means trusting you with my internal world. Trust is not believing you'll never hurt me. Trust is believing that if I hand you something fragile, you won't weaponize it. And I want to believe that about you. There's no guarantee in vulnerability. No contract that says honesty equals permanence. But hiding doesn't guarantee permanence either. It only guarantees distance. And distance feels worse than risk. If this relationship is going to last, it cannot be built on curated strength. It has to be built on mutual transparency. That doesn't mean constant emotional intensity. It means emotional availability. It means the door is open even when the room feels messy. I'm opening the door. Inside, you'll find doubts I'm still unpacking, fears I'm still challenging, patterns I'm still unlearning, but you'll also find sincerity, effort, commitment, a deep desire to build something that doesn't rely on illusion. I don't want to be loved for how composed I seem. I want to be loved for how honest I'm willing to be. And honesty means admitting that sometimes I'm afraid you'll see my cracks and decide they're too much. But it also means trusting that you might see them and choose me anyway. That choice, freely made, fully informed, is the foundation I want. Not love based on assumption, love based on awareness. So here I am, not perfectly secure, not fully healed, not entirely fearless, but real. And I would rather risk losing you while being real than keep you while being partially hidden. Because being partially hidden means never truly relaxing, never fully exhaling, never feeling safe enough to stop performing. I don't want to perform love. I want to live it. Fully seen, fully known, fully human. And whatever grows from that honesty will be stronger than anything built on silence.